Roughly about 3 months ago, I have finally moved out of my parents' place and got my own apartment about an hour away from their place. I graduated high school 2 years ago. My parents, like all parents, wanted me to go to college, but I had different ideas. In terms of grades, I was a very average student. I always knew I didn't have the talents to become a doctor or a scientist. However, one thing that I was better than everyone else I knew was crafting things. I especially liked working with metal, and that's how I began selling metal arts and crafts on eBay. Not many people bought my stuff on eBay, but I did have the luck of meeting an art dealer through it. That's how I began making good money, and that led to my independence at such young age. So here I am, barely having turned 20, living in my own apartment and learning what it takes to be an adult. So this one night, I can't recall exactly when, but it was roughly about 3 months ago. The phone rang, and I'm not talking about my cell phone, but I mean my home phone rang. I picked it up and I heard this weird electronic sounds coming from the other end. The best that I could describe the sound would be to compare it to an 8-bit music. If you're not familiar with 8-bit music, then just think of the music from the old games, the Atari, original Nintendo, and so on. But yeah, the sound is similar to that, but they're not as musical as the beats in the games. They're just random electronic noises. While the sounds were playing on the phone, I checked the caller ID, but nothing showed up. Actually, saying that nothing showed up isn't exactly right. The screen did show something, and I say something because the letters were all garbled gibberish. If you're familiar with the screens on the calculators, then you know the numbers are displayed by turning certain dots on the screen black or blank. Well, there were dots that had turned black, but not in the way that they would form a letter. At least not the letters you and I would understand. Again, the letters were all garbled gibberish. I thought that it must be some kind of a glitch and therefore hung up the phone and turned on the TV to play some video games. Then about a minute thereafter, I thought I heard someone knocking on the door. So I walked to the front door, looked through the peephole, and at the same time say, "Who is it?" No one answers, but I can see my neighbor from across the hallway hitting at the wall with his palm. I opened the door and right away could hear multiple persons hitting at the wall. I take a few steps into the hallway and find almost everyone who lives on the floor having come out into the hallway and hitting at the wall. The apartments that have more than one person residing, I see that the girlfriend, boyfriend, or whoever unaffected is trying to stop their partners or families from hitting at the wall. Some speak to them gently, some scream at them, but none of the wall bangers seem to react to anyone speaking. A lady asks for my help, but I tell her to wait for me and head toward the staircase. I walk down the stairs, then emerge in the hallway on the floor below. The same is happening on that floor as well. So I go down another floor, then another floor, only to realize that every floor's got a ton of wall bangers going to town on the walls. Some 5 minutes pass when one by one, the wall bangers start to come back to reality. Before 10 minutes are up, the wall banging stops completely, the cops and EMTs arrive shortly thereafter, and everyone's out in the hallway asking questions and some still panicking about the whole thing. There are 3 things that we found out that night. 1, everyone in the building got that strange call that I described earlier in the story. 2, only the ones who heard the sound became the wall bangers. And 3, not everyone were affected by the sound. There was a small percentage of people to whom the sound had no effect, me being one of them. However, the crazy experience of the night doesn't stop there. You see, I actually called a TV network on the same night with 2 of my neighbors present, and all 3 of us took turns to speak to the person at the network. Kelly was the rep whom I spoke to, and she was very interested in the story, especially when I told her that the entire apartment residents were witnesses to the event. She said she'd be sending out a crew right away as soon as she was able to touch base with the police, but the TV crew never came to the apartment. Think about it. Who in the right mind would purposely miss out on a story like that? One of the most peculiar stories in the last 100 years, and that story just happens to have perhaps over 100 witnesses. That is, unless someone in the higher up got a call from someone from even higher up in the food chain and they were told to specifically suppress the story. Because I tell you what, I spoke to all major TV networks, all major online and print syndication, but not a single one of them wanted to run the story. One of my neighbors published the story on his website that normally gets about 100 visitors per day. Do you know what happened to that particular post? It's no longer online. His domain registrar voided his domain name for breaking the terms of service. I'm not going to name which social networking websites because I don't want to get sued. But I know each and every one of the apartment residents' social accounts are being monitored as well. Whenever we post anything relating to the incident, the posts go up, but they're hidden from other people. They may show up to those who are linked to our accounts, but the story never goes beyond that point. Living in the world that's going digital, I always assumed that suppressing the voice of the general public would no longer be possible. But you know what? It's actually made it easier. The police say that the wall banging had nothing to do with the phone call, and none of the news media is willing to help us tell the story. The powers that be don't have to shut us up physically. They don't have to send men in black suits to off anyone. With nearly 100% of the media and social media networks being owned by 6 giant corporations, it merely takes blacklisting a few names from online activities to keep any story under wraps. No offense to you, Dennis, and to other YouTubers, but sending you this story was my last resort. Which, by the way, I know already that it won't do much good in spreading my words to the general public. We listen to these stories for fun and to de-stress after a long day. No one takes these things seriously. My story will be thought of as one of the dime a dozen stories that have been sent to you by aspiring writers. At least that's what I thought of your stories until something incredible happened to me as well. I know, it's very ironic how I ended up in this position. Before I say goodbye, I would advise people to not answer their phones if they see some type of garbled letters on their caller ID. It's true that no one got hurt from the experience that I had. Therefore, it may not seem like a big deal, but it is. It's about losing control of your mind for long enough of a time to either hurt yourself or others. That's a big deal. It's terrifying to me because I know it can be done. The wall bangers took out their rage on the wall this time. However, if this is some type of a test on live human subjects, then who knows what they'll target the next time. It could be you, me, or anyone else you know. Just be mindful of that the next time you answer a call.